Hello, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Network. I'm Rick Anthony. My guest today is James A. Stuber. Jim is founder and president of Alltham PBC, a public benefit corporation dedicated to building healthy communities by helping consumers buy products made in those communities. Alltham is associated with Made in America, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to creating awareness of the problem of offshoring jobs and how consumers can help solve the problem. You've been hearing a lot about that lately. Jim is also author of What If Things Were Made in America Again, how consumers can rebuild the middle class by buying things made in American communities. It's a long title, but it's worth a read, and it's certainly worth your consideration. The book was published in 2017, so it's quite contemporary. Welcome back, Jim, to the Entrepreneurs Network.
Thanks, Rick. It's great to be with you.
I don't remember how long it's been, but it seems to me it's been at least a few years since you and I visited like this to talk about your journey, at least up to that point.
Yes, in fact, I checked, and it was May of 2018.
Wow.
So it's been a little while. Time flies when you're having fun.
You keep those records, huh? Good for you. Okay. Jim, until recently, you've been a tinkering bell with your message about Made in America and so on. But you've been at this long before Made in America became a campaign slogan. What is there in your background? What's motivated you to stay the course? Because you've been working at this for a very long time against some pretty strong odds. Why? What is there about this cause and about you that has kept you going?
Well, Rick, what I think it is that my family all worked in the steel mills in Pittsburgh and Eastern Ohio. And that was just my background. My father, my grandfather, everybody worked in the mill. And so in the 1970s and 1980s, when we were busy sending all those jobs overseas and all of the jobs associated with them, it really bothered me. It hit home. So it bothered me, but not enough to do anything about it until one evening in December of 2012, I took out a light bulb and noticed that on the light bulb was the GE logo, and underneath it in all caps, the word China. And I thought, if GE, of all people, are making their light bulbs in China, maybe we have a problem. So it was just something that grabbed a hold of me, and because of that background, it wouldn't let go. And So I went on a journey to look into three questions. Why was that light bulb and everything else being made overseas? And is it causing a problem? And if it is, what could we do about it? So the quick answer was, yes, it's causing a huge problem. And I formed a nonprofit, a 501c3 that you mentioned, to try to get the word out about what a big problem this was and how consumers could solve it. And as I did that, I realized, I really needed to go deep to find the answers because I really didn't know. And so you mentioned the book, and here it is. When I met with you, I was 1 year into writing this book, but it took 3 years in the Penn Library to get to the bottom of all of this. And I have to confess that I didn't know 95% of what's in that book. So I invite people to come with me on that journey to find out. And so, of course, the happy last chapter of my book is that consumers could solve this problem because we're 70% of the economy. So just with our money we're already spending, we could solve these problems. And I love that because we don't need the government to support it or give us permission. But there were a couple of things I was wishing the government would do when they're spending our tax dollars, spend it on money on things made here, and make us have clear labeling so we could tell where things are made. Mm-hmm. And so I was going to form another nonprofit, but I got active in a group called the Coalition for a Prosperous America. It's American manufacturers. And through them, I've pursued those policies, especially the labeling. And in fact, a bill that I propose has been introduced to require clear country of origin labeling so consumers can do that. And then, but I realized, okay, you can just tell people now, go out there and buy American made, and you can't even find the stuff. And I thought the internet should be able to solve that problem. And I looked, and there's really not a lot on the internet now for consumers to find things made in America. So that's the third project, and that's Alltham, which is putting up a place where people can go and find American-made things. So I formed Alltham as a nonprofit, as a public benefit corporation to pursue that business.
What is that? What's a public benefit corporation?
Well, it's a company that's a for-profit company, but which has baked into its charter a social mission. And it actually came about, a couple of local businessmen here in Philadelphia sold their company, and the new owners really gutted their social purpose that they had built into the company for their employees, and how they were trying to do things right, and they were aghast at their legacy being squandered. And so they proposed a new kind of hybrid, not a nonprofit. It is a for-profit, but in the charter, you say, here's what we're in business to do besides making a profit. And so with Alltham, the social mission is to build healthy communities by helping people buy things that are made in those communities. And that's the same social mission as the 501c3 nonprofit.
Okay, so it is a legal entity, just as an S corp or an LLC, because I'd not heard the designation before. I don't think.
Yes, and it's a recent phenomenon. And fortunately for me, right before I formed Alltham, Delaware adopted its version of the Public Benefit Corporation. So Alltham is a Delaware Public Benefit Corporation, and so it could go public. For example, it's in every way it's like a for-profit corporation. But nobody can take shots at us because we're pursuing a social mission in addition to shareholder value.
So you've got a double, triple bottom line.
Exactly.
Okay. Back in 2012, when I think you said this whole notion really hit you and motivated you to act, did you conceive that today we'd be seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of companies coming back from offshore? To bring manufacturing back to the U.S. I mean, we talked about it. God knows lots of people have talked about it over the years and kind of dismissed it. It never happened because the economics aren't there. We can't match the cheap labor, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems to be happening.
Well, yes. And, what I could not have foreseen, Rick, is what I would call the COVID-19 effect. Because with COVID-19, we realized not only did we not have access to all of these medical supplies we needed, but when China shut down, that we just had huge supply chain interruptions in pretty much everything else. So this was kind of one of these externalities that economists call them that came zooming in here and really brought into focus what the heck was going on. And made companies realize the risks that were in their supply chain, and so they a lot of them have been taking steps to bring that stuff home where they can have better control over it.
Do you think it's permanent, or do you think after COVID is behind, God help us, behind us, however long that takes, that because of the economics, because of all of the things that motivated people to move offshore in the first place, lower cost, et cetera, that we will revert to that?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not really sanguine about that because those forces are all still in effect. And so I think a lot of what you're seeing is companies saying, oh, well, we have to diversify our supply chain. And so they're going to try to spread it around, to Vietnam and some other low-wage places. And also, you still see a lot of trends, for example, in the automobile industry. We're still seeing a lot of the components in automobiles going offshore to Mexico or to China. It's still a trend. So it's still a mixed bag. But on the other hand, I am hopeful that this can be the start of something.
Mm-hmm. Do you support government intervention and government punishing companies that offshore, that take large chunks of their business offshore and the jobs that go with it?
Well, I don't think punishment is the right word. I think that that incentivizing them, first of all, let's stop incentivizing them to go offshore. So our international tax laws still give companies a way to park their profits offshore, make it better for them to go offshore. So let's stop incentivizing them, and then let's do a reverse incentive, and let's create some incentives, tax credits, research and development credits. There's a lot of things we could do to incentivize these companies to come back. But I also do strongly support using our laws to prevent other countries from taking advantage of the situation. So, for example, national security tariffs. if we believe that we need a steel industry and an aluminum industry in order just for our national security to have that capacity, then I support the idea of putting tariffs on that cheap steel that China's been dumping into the United States. So no, we don't need to punish companies, but we can reverse the incentives.
You know, with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, how did we permit this country to become so dependent on a foreign nation for our pharmaceuticals, our health, and national defense? How did that happen?
Yeah, Rick, it's a fascinating question, and it's one that I spent a lot of time on when I was researching the book. It's quite a journey, and I really would commend people to have a look at the first 3 chapters of the book where I lay this out. But the first answer is we were fighting communism. China went communist in 1949, and they came into the Korean War in 1951. And so there was an embargo on Chinese goods, and we did not want Japan and Taiwan and Hong Kong trading with China. So we said, you're not allowed to trade with them, but to make up for that, here, we'll give you some of our markets. And so we, for example, gave away, our textile and clothing markets to Japan and, at great cost to Americans. So part of it was fighting communism. And then part of it was that our leaders just bought into some obviously faulty theories that they thought, oh, well, we're going to keep the high-tech jobs here at home, and we're going to send the low-tech jobs overseas, as if every American has a 130 IQ, and we didn't need those low-tech jobs. Of course, the other countries didn't buy into that. We also said, hey, we're going to keep the high-tech products here, and we'll just, have them make all the low-tech products. And of course, they didn't buy into that either. They kept wanting to move up the supply chain and make ever more sophisticated things, which we saw Japan do, and now, we're seeing China do. So none of that worked out. And so at the end of the day, we really were pursuing 2 things: low price and solving poverty abroad. We thought that, not we, but our academics and some of our political leaders thought it was important to solve poverty in China, even though that was causing poverty in Pennsylvania. So the answer is that we bought into a lot of faulty trade theories that made people argue that if we entered into NAFTA with Mexico, Mexico was going to be buying automobiles and air conditioners from the United States. It's crazy to look back on that and think we really bought that. And of course, some people even said, we're going to be a post-industrial economy. We don't even need to make anything anymore.
Yeah.
So it was all this faulty thinking. But now we have the benefit of experience, and we realize, no, it didn't work out that way. And so we need to recognize that.
Do you think we can really bring basic manufacturing back to this country and put in place all of the infrastructure that would be necessary to support a manufacturing economy?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. First of all, we have to recognize that there's still a lot of manufacturing going on in the United States. So we're talking at the margin here. We're not where we should be, but we still know how to do all of this. We still have a lot of capability. Now, there are some industries where we sent the entire industry overseas, and so the COVID-19 has brought that home to bear. And oh my gosh, nobody's even making protective clothing or some of the things that we've needed to fight this pandemic. But we certainly have the capacity to do that. If we have the national intention to do it. And that intention has to come at a governmental level, but also at a consumer level. And my focus is that if consumers would demand things made in the United States and seek out things made in the United States, under our economic system, the system will respond with the supply to meet that demand.
Okay, let's dwell on that for a moment. Give me a lesson in the economics that you present in your book, I'm sure, and show me how the benefit of buying local gets down through the community and helps to rebuild the middle class. I remember seeing, I did some reading before preparing for this. I remember seeing a number. There was a factor of some kind. It was could result in $1 billion worth of economic value if people bought locally. Does that number sound right?
Well, it's actually a bigger number than that. Maybe you're thinking of just local spending, but at a national level, what I focused on was what's the gap between what we're buying from other countries and what we're selling to them. And so that's been running $600, $700 billion a year in goods. It's been partially offset by selling them more services than we. So I identified a $500 billion goal of bringing that much consumer spending home and pumping that into the economy. And there have been studies that show that that would create 6 million jobs, and not just any jobs. These are good jobs, family supporting jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key to this whole thing, is that when I stopped and looked back at this history, you realize that after World War II, we embarked on this 30 years, these kind of golden years of prosperity, but it was a broadly shared prosperity. So as our gross national product grew and as company sales grew, we shared that with the workers. And so we created this big middle class with this broadly shared prosperity. But unfortunately, as we got into this idea of free trade and then globalization, we really were just looking for the lowest price. And so, that's all globalization is just a global search for the lowest price, labor and the least regulation. And so we entered into this, what I call the low cost, low wage society. And by sending those jobs overseas, what I saw in my research was that basically we were turning $30 an hour jobs into $15 dollar jobs, because either they lost their job and had to go to work at Walmart or some such place, or the companies said, okay, we're going to have a two-tier wage now, and so you Boeing workers, some of you are making 30, but the rest of you are only making 15, and you can't support a family on $15 an hour in America today. So what we need to do is remember how we were practicing capitalism, and remember that it's this broad, this middle class of consumers with $1 in their pocket that really drive the economy. We have a demand-driven economy.
In your book, do you take corporate America to task for corporate greed?
Well, yes. This was really quite an opportunity for me to stop and think about this, because this aspect of it, of sending these jobs overseas, was kind of my angle on it. But, there are other ways that we have kind of departed from that golden mean. We had this way of practicing capitalism that did recognize that we were in this game to create a prosperity for the American people. So one of the things that happened was that there became this support for Milton Friedman's idea of shareholder value being the only thing we were up to, which of course was not what our founders had in mind. They had in mind to create a prosperous nation. So this is one of the big ways I think we need to get back to focusing on the idea, what are we about here? What are we trying to accomplish? And I believe we're trying to accomplish the American dream, that people can get up in the morning, work hard at a job that needs worth doing, support a family, and have the hope that the next generation will have it better off than they did.
I think the last time we visited, you had not yet launched the portal, Alltham, so that people could buy products made in America. How's that going, and how do you propose to compete now? You mentioned before that you didn't think there were too many sites. I think I counted about 13 or 14 sites that I just picked off on the internet that are selling made in America goods. Some of them in some interesting verticals, just toys or just apparel, but they're clearly in the game.
Mm. Well, the big differentiator that I want to accomplish is having a one-stop shop where there's a wide product selection, so that if someone has decided that they'd like to buy American for all these different reasons, that this is a place where they could go and find what they're looking for. So as I looked at the business model, I discovered Wayfair, the online home goods seller, and the key to their success was that they, right from the get-go, they had a very wide selection of the things that you were looking for. So that's what hasn't been done yet. These other sites, either you can't buy on the site, they will send you off to the company's website, or they have a limited selection. So that's my ultimate goal. But I am in the meantime starting to get into some of the verticals. The one that I'm working on right now is outdoor patio furnishings, because with COVID, we've had so much nest building going on. So I'm kind of focusing on the home, and I'm going to bring Alltham on board through some of the verticals that relate to the home. And also some of these products are at the higher price point. And so I'm also focusing on the consumer who has the few extra dollars in their pocket, and price isn't what's driving their purchase, but rather they're looking for enduring quality.
I mentioned this before, and you mentioned it certainly, and I've forgotten who coined the phrase, never let a good crisis go to waste. But we seem to be learning from this crisis. My concern, though, is, I've done a lot of work in organizational effectiveness and performance improvement with corporations. And my experience has been when some of the pressure is up, organizations revert to what they were before. It's just comfortable for them. And it's less risky for them because they settle back into the old ways. My concern is that once COVID is, God willing, behind us, this country is going to revert to where we were before COVID. And we're going to continue to offshore to wherever we can get it the cheapest, wherever we can get more profit, whatever is good for the corporation, not necessarily good for the market or the consumer. It's just the human nature. How do we protect against that?
Well,
we can't.
Yes. Well, first of all, I believe that this crisis has changed the risk analysis that's going on inside companies. And they've realized that there are other qualities in the purchase than price that they need to look for. So they need a reliable partner who's going to have the availability that they need. And so they can kind of de-risk their supply chain by looking to the United States. So that's my latest project. This is only a week old, but I am working on what you might call a marketplace or a clearinghouse, where companies who are looking to find intermediate components that are made in the United States can go on this site, and they can find those manufacturers in that sector that they're looking for. There's a company called Thomas that's been around for 100 years doing this. So you might think of this as like a Thomas for American made. So I do think you're going to see a different analysis going on inside companies. And then there are some externalities because there are a lot of national security implications to this. And so the federal government in its buying can become a big consumer that's going to affect how companies work. And just in August, the president signed an executive order directing the federal departments to take the steps necessary to secure the American medical supply chain. So I think that with medicines and medical devices, medical supplies, you're going to see a big change just with that, because the federal government, Departments of Defense, the veterans, they're a big spender in that field. And so there are going to be some other incentives at work that will lead companies to, secure their supply chains with products made in the United States.
Do you also have more confidence in the millennials? This generation that's taking over and moving up in corporations, decision-making positions. Do you have confidence in their ethics, their values, what they perceive to be important to them, to this country?
Yes, I do. This is one of the bright spots, because my experience is that the millennials are more concerned with the ethics of all of this.
Yeah.
And they really do care. They want to be a conscious consumer who's doing the right thing. And I spoke with a millennial who grew up in Cleveland, and or Detroit, and he saw the automobile jobs go away while he was in first grade through high school, and he saw it happen. And so they're concerned. I think it's a real bright spot for the future.
The book. Where can we get a copy of the book?
Well, first, on the website for my nonprofit, which is madeinamerikaagain.org. One can go there and hear more about everything I've been saying today. And there's a link to my publisher where you can buy the book. It's also available on Barnes & Noble. It's available on Amazon. And you can ask any bookstore, and they'll get one in just a few days. So it's pretty much out there.
You've listed an awful lot of activities, past, present, and I'm sure to come. Have you put together a management team?
No, it's funny. This has really been, although I have partnered with CPA, this has been an individual effort so far. But I am in the process now of raising some venture funding to expand Alltham and bring in that initial team to build that website that we're talking about. I'd also like to staff up the nonprofit. So I'm right in the middle of that, Rick, of seeking out some additional funding. I have had some angel funding in the past, and I'm ready to take this to the next level.
Why would an investor put money in your venture? It's got to
have the opportunity.
Patient money, at least.
Yeah, well, they'd have the opportunity to get in on the ground floor of the next Wayfair. Wayfair, when I found them, were doing $600 million a year in business. They're doing $9 billion a year now. So it's a proven business model. Maybe it's not the ground floor of Amazon, but this is e-commerce, and so we don't have regulatory risk. We don't have technology risk. It's really a question: is the market there? And I think it's clear that that Americans do want to buy American, and they're just frustrated. And so it's an opportunity to get in on the ground floor or something.
Is there a market outside of the U.S. for made in America?
Yes, there is. There's still a lot of interest in things made here. Made in USA is still a good brand because people like American quality. They like American design. And so part of the business plan is to have people coming on the site from overseas and buying things made in the USA. There are actually two sites, one for the higher price point sites. And I would foresee that those foreign consumers who have a few extra dollars in their pocket, they're going to want to come on the site and buy the Allen Edmonds shoes or some of the more sophisticated American products.
Are you offering discounts this week only?
We will in the beginning, you can be sure.
And you'll see me on this site.
Good.
I assume you've been getting support from the international unions?
Well, yes. The CPA has, as part of its membership, its manufacturers, its farmers, and its some unions, including the Teamsters, for example. I also have worked with the Alliance for American Manufacturers, which is the steel workers. So they are all on board, and that's encouraging.
It's been great fun catching up with you again. I admired your tenacity 2 years ago. I admire it all the more that you've been able to push this as far as you have, almost single-handedly. And for that, I commend you. It's a worthy cause. And if I can be of any help, I'm happy to pitch in. I can't invest. My wife won't let me invest in anything anymore because I push losing money to a fine art. but that's another story. Jim Stuber, again, the website is?
MadeInAmericaAgain.org.
Okay. Thank you very much. Best of luck.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
This is the Entrepreneurs Network. I'm Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourselves.